Singer, songwriter, and musician Moby, who was born Richard Hall, has sold more than 20 million records worldwide and been a fixture in the dance music scene for some 25 years. He has also never been shy about sharing his political opinions, and he uses his music and popularity on social media to share his thoughts on political affairs, equality, and fight for animal rights, among many other topics. He's recently stopped by to talk to us about his new memoir, Porcelain, in which he writes about his life and career, and we talked about Trump and Clinton and his frustrations with some of Bernie Sanders' supporters who claim they won't vote for Mrs. Clinton if she becomes the nominee. In April last year, you tweeted, "Elections are not the time for naive idealism, when the alternative to Hillary Clinton will be a Koch brothers-backed Tea Party Republican." You were talking to Bernie Sanders supporters. Well, that all's been turned around. I don't think the Kochs are going to endorse Trump.
Yeah, I think it was Charles or David Koch actually said something vaguely nice about Hillary, which really makes me think we're in a Philip K. Dick book. You know, you have Trump as the presumptive Republican nominee and the Koch brothers potentially considering Hillary. Like it's like we've gone through the looking glass.
Doesn't Bernie Sanders fit a lot of your political philosophy?
So I think that Bernie Sanders, his policy positions, and I think are wonderful, a lot of them. I think, unfortunately, and I don't want to incur the wrath or ire of Sanders supporters, but there's some demagoguery going on, because a lot of what he said, like, break up the banks. What does that mean? Like, I agree that there's a lot of collusion and corruption in the world of finance. You know, like Charles Ferguson had that great movie Inside Job that really demonstrated that. But it's such a populist statement to say break up the banks. It's also not something that the president can do. You know, it's kind of like Trump saying build the wall. It's like, but you can't do that. You know, I remember hearing a debate between Garcetti, our mayor, and the woman he was running against. And the person asked them a question, said, what are you going to do for public schools in LA? And Eric Garcetti laughed. He said, well, I can tell you my answer, but the mayor has nothing to do with education in LA. So I have an opinion, but what's the point? So, like, some of what Bernie Sanders says makes so much sense and is spot on, but there's a degree of demagoguery there as well that makes me a little concerned. Also, I was raised by feminists, and I love the idea of a strong, smart woman as the president of the United States.
Will they give Bernie a voice at the convention?
I think they have to.
I think they have.
And I don't think it's inconceivable that he would be her running mate. Like, traditionally, traditionally you looked at it from an electoral perspective. Like, he comes from Vermont that has like 0.1 electoral votes, and it's already a blue state. But he has so much name recognition and so much respect and loyalty at this point that I think the criteria for choosing a running mate could potentially
be like Kennedy
be changed.
and Johnson.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Kennedy picked Johnson because he needed Texas, but they had a tough primary against each other.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of primaries, there were 8. But at the convention, there was spirited debate between them. In fact, they went and debated at the convention. People forget that.
But at the very least,
so she could choose Bernie.
I don't think it's inconceivable, because, like, the earned media she would get from that. You know, if she picks Julian Castro, that's great, but you don't get a huge bump.
She's going to get the Latino vote.
Yeah.
Keene of Virginia, though, the senator, would be an interesting pick.
Or Claire McCaskill. She would kind of be my pick. 2 women. Yeah, I think that Claire McCaskill from Missouri, because she's this super strong, smart, blue dog Democrat.
You've used your social media, I'm told, to take some Bernie Sanders supporters to task for suggesting that he won't support Mrs. Clinton. Where else does Bernie go but to support her?
I mean, there's a hashtag Bernie or bust. And again, keep in mind, like, ideologically, I like most of what Bernie Sanders says, and I agree with most of his supporters. But when someone says that they won't vote for Hillary Clinton because she's not Bernie Sanders, to me, that's basically saying that you're willing to hand the Supreme Court, the environment, the climate, education, all these women's health issues, you're willing to hand all these to the Republicans. And I find it dangerous and irresponsible for anyone on the progressive side to even think for a second of not voting for whoever the Democratic nominee is.
Susan Sarandon, a major Sanders supporter, when I asked her, she wouldn't commit to Hillary. And apparently there are some on the Sanders side who...
And there's a principle behind it, which is they want basically the Democratic Party to go to the left. But in order to do that, they're going to give up 4 years of the issues they care about. You know, as I said, Supreme Court, climate, environment, education, immigration. So for 4 years, they're willing to hand these issues to Republicans just to make a point. And I think that's really egregious.
You think the Republicans are making a mistake in not putting this nominee on the court?
But I think it's absurd because there's no precedent for it. Even like Mitch McConnell, I forget, there was a prior Republican nominee, and Mitch McConnell was arguing for even though it was like in a late-term lame duck presidency, he was saying that the Senate should consider it. So it's very hypocritical. And he's also a moderate who's earned the support of so many Republicans.
Yeah.
And it just makes, I mean, I'm not pro-Republican anyway, but it just makes them look even worse. Like to just like shut down the legislative process because they're uncomfortable with it. Like that's not the way our country is supposed to work.
Hillary is not a great campaigner, would you
No,
agree?
luckily,
she's very smart, she's very funny, she has a great sense of humor, I know her well.
yeah.
Why doesn't that transpose?
I think she has what I'll call like John Kerry-itis. I worked with Senator Kerry or Secretary Kerry when he was running. And he's smart and principled and wonderful. The moment you put him in front of an audience, he shuts down. Al Gore, to a similar extent. I don't know why Hillary has such a hard time connecting, because you're absolutely right. Like, in person, you can tell she's erudite and principled and experienced and wonderful, but something happens when she starts campaigning. It sometimes pushes people away rather than draws them in. But I still think she would make a phenomenal president.
She's not learned from Bill, who's the best.
Yeah, the way he can work a room, I mean, like, it's pretty mad. I mean, I saw him give an off-the-cuff speech for about 20 minutes at an event in New York, and it was like watching Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. I was like, or Miles Davis. I was like, it was the most remarkable speech I'd ever heard, and it was extemporaneous.
Obama's pretty good, too.
Yeah. Especially at the correspondence dinner. Like, I think there should be like Obama's correspondence dinner's greatest hits.
Yeah. How do you explain Trump's success?
The power of celebrity and the understanding that rule number one, control the headlines. You know, it's kind of like what Karl Rove did with Bush. It's like, control the headlines and don't worry about the details. You know, because people, especially in the way people respond to media now, they respond to the bright, splashy headline, and no one cares about the fine print. So Trump comes out, controls the headline, presents himself as this cartoonish alpha male, and he's familiar, and people respond to it.
Do you think he could beat her?
His power, I mean, it's two things, Ohio and Florida. And that's what scares me, because he does really well in the Rust Belt. And Ohio, like I looked at a Gallup poll earlier, right now, Hillary's beating Trump by 2 points in Ohio. And that's kind of scary. And Florida, you know, if Trump does the smart thing and picks Rubio as his running mate, and if he gets Florida and Ohio, he's the next president.
You think he might pick Rubio?
That would be the smartest VP, or either Kasich or Rubio. I mean, like, those...
Kasich wouldn't run with him.
Yeah, I wonder, I
don't think John would run with him.
But so if he had one of those two as his running mate, I think Hillary's going to have a very, very hard time.
Animal rights very important to you. Has Mrs. Clinton provided any indication it's important to her?
Not yet, because it's certainly not a vote-getting position.
No.
But I'm quite good friends with Cory Booker, you know, Cory, the senator from New Jersey. And Cory is a very committed vegan and animal rights person, and he's quite close to Senator, First Lady Clinton. And I feel like there's so many compelling reasons to consider an inclusion of animal welfare and a democratic platform, and also to look at the role of subsidies in animal agriculture. Because without subsidies, a pound of beef would cost around $40. You know, without subsidies, a family of 4 going to McDonald's costs them about $80. But like indirect and direct subsidies to animal agriculture are ideally something that a lot of people are going to be able to get behind, or opposing them rather.
You recently had an Instagram fun with Donald Trump. When on Cinco de Mayo, he ate a taco bowl made into Trump Tower Grill, and he said, "I love Hispanics." You said, "Poor Senor Trump, courting the Latino vote via taco bowl, as if a year of anti-Latino racist hate speech can be undone with a lunch menu item."
Yeah, I mean, also the use of the word Hispanics. Like, I don't know a single Latino who likes being called Hispanic, you know? And so the idea of like using this word Hispanic, which most Latinos bristle at, while eating a taco bowl after a year of like pretty virulent anti-Latino speech, it didn't I don't think it did him any favors.
Why is Obama way up over 50% now?
Maybe because people have been, I mean, first of all, if we look at the last 8 years, I mean, like Obama inherited one of the worst economies in the history of the United States. And things have turned around. You could say maybe it's cyclical and it would have happened anyway, but nonetheless, he's been, you know, our commander-in-chief, our executive, as the economy has turned around. And I mean, perhaps there are ways in which on a systemic level the economy could improve, but it's generally pretty good. And I think it's pretty good for a lot of people. So that's
and it's the economy, stupid.
It's the economy, stupid. It's also, but I think people will like look at Ted Cruz, look at Ben Carson, look at Trump, and then look at Obama. And Obama seems like a grown-up. You know, and the others, they watch the debates, and like, there's Marco Rubio making fun of Donald Trump's penis. And you're like, really? Like, what? You're behaving worse than like ADD-riddled school kids in elementary school.
My ball, and I'm taking it home.
Yeah, so I think Obama, just by comparison, seems like an erudite adult.
Thanks, Moby.
My pleasure. Nice talking.
Moby's book is Porcelain. We thank him for being with us on this edition of Politicking.